Are you talking shift? We are. It's time for the We're Talking Shift podcast. Now. Here to talk shift, Loree Bischoff. We're Talking Shift.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 60. Episode 60 I'm up to. That's feeling pretty good. Episode 60 of We're Talking Shift, the podcast where I talk a lot of shift because I believe that when we feel stuck or when it's time to level up, rise to a challenge or make any kind of a shift, the process must begin with a shift in our thinking. That is the antidote to feeling stuck. Today, I thought it would be fun to talk about an article that I ran across recently about emotional intelligence based on the findings of psychologist and science journalist Daniel Goleman. Now, Mr. Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, published in 1995, introduced the developing concept of emotional intelligence. It draws on the groundbreaking brain and behavioral research that revealed the factors at work when people of high IQ flounder and those of modest IQ do surprisingly well. These factors, which include self-awareness, self-discipline, and empathy, add up to a different way of being smart, one that he terms emotional intelligence. I don't know. I like the sounds of that. His book actually redefines what it means to be smart. That sounds really good to me, you guys. Now, this article outlined 13 indicators or characteristics marking emotional intelligence. So I thought it would be interesting and fun to share them, explore a few of them a little bit with TJ, and we'll see where it takes us. TJ, what's up?
How are you? 60. Congratulations. That's a big sort of watermark to hit.
I think so, right? It feels good.
And credit to you. I mean, we've been working together for, a little over a year. And that tells me if we're on episode 60 and there's 52 weeks in a year that you're very consistent. And that is the hardest part about podcasting is being consistent. And you've done a great job at that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm big on consistency. When I get into something that's important to me, I don't care if it's, my new product line for my face and my skincare, or if it's, what I'm eating, my diet or this, when I'm into it, I am extremely consistent, probably a little anal about it, but that's okay. It works for me.
We are creatures of habit, and the best way to make something, especially things that we like in our life, best way to make it a staple of our life is to, make it a part of your routine. And you've done just that. And a lot of people with podcasts, why I think, consistency is an issue is a lot of people want to do a podcast. They hear the idea. Yeah, that sounds great. And then they find out, oh man, that's a lot of work. It's kind of hard.
Right. It is. I think it's, I put some time into it. I don't just wing it. I admire people that can jump on and wing it and have great content. But for me, I just have to be organized. I have to put some thought in it. And I'm just really, big on making sure that I feel that everything that I'm putting out there is valuable.
Well, you do a great job. And time and time again, I find myself getting sucked into the content of the show. And I'm just supposed to sit here and not crack the mic every episode, and when I get to, I'm very excited that I do. So it's a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you. And one day we'll do that where I'll be like, you know what? I'm just going to give you the green light, the freedom to just, if you feel like bouncing in with something just out of left field, I'm just going to say, go for it.
I will do my best to not make you regret that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so you ready to talk about some the points and the characteristics of emotional intelligence?
Let's do it.
Okay. All right, we've got 13 of them here. The first one is you think about feelings. It says emotional intelligence begins with what is called self and social awareness, the ability to recognize emotions and their impact in both yourself and others. So that awareness begins with reflection, right? So you might even like ask yourself, where are my emotional strengths? What are my weaknesses? How does my current mood affect my thoughts and decision making and so on? What do you think about that?
100%. I mean, I think that we need to be analytical and aware. And I think I do this a lot. I like to, I mean, this is not just with like emotions. This is every sort of situation in life, especially when I find that someone disagrees with me. I want to figure out why they disagree with me. And I kind of think about like, okay, if I were in their shoes, how are they seeing this? How are they feeling about this? And I think the same goes for emotion and feeling in that way. And the old saying is do unto others as you would like others to do unto you. And I try to live by that as much as I can because,
Yeah.
I'm only me. I only know how I would feel about certain things. But at the same time, like I want to make sure that I'm not making anyone upset or making them feel a way that I'm not trying to get them to feel. And the only way to do that is looking inward and seeing how
Right.
you would feel.
Yeah, that's true. I looked at that and I kind of asked myself, I was like, well, what would I consider my own emotional strengths and my own emotional weaknesses? So I was like, how does my current mood affect my thoughts and my decision making? So I know like for myself, when I thought about it, I was like, well, when I'm feeling really great, which is most of the time, I'm usually a pretty up person. And so in that state of mind with those, more high vibrating feelings, I tend to jump at opportunities. I take more risks. And, if I hit a low spot, which doesn't happen too often, but, every now and then I know that I can start to second guess myself a little bit, wonder, if I'm doing the right thing or in the right way. So it was kind of interesting to sort of take stock of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Real quick too on that sort of thought process. Like when I think about the ability to sort of think outside of our shell, I think that goes back to really sort of the whole point of this conversation, like emotional and mental intelligence. Like I think we may not have it when we're younger, but at some point it's going to develop. You're going to go through a maturation process. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't think about. Like physically, we can see how someone is maturing and growing, up. And there's a lot of sort of thought and emphasis on how we are, growing up. There's doctor checkups and things like that and watermarks and benchmarks to hit. I feel there's the same sort of things when it comes to mental health and mental maturation, but it's not, something that is, hey, I got to go to the doctor every year to get my yearly checkup about, my emotions. That's not a thing for people. And I think maybe it should be.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's been largely overlooked, really, until kind of recently, and that's when I was skimming through the book on top of this article. It was talking a lot about that, so I think you're right on there. The second one is you pause. So the pause is as simple as taking a moment to stop and think before you speak or act, which is obviously for a lot of people easy in theory, but rather difficult in practice. But it can help save you from embarrassing moments or from making commitments too quickly. So it says, in other words, pausing helps you refrain from making a permanent decision based on a temporary emotion. And I think that's a really good point there. I mean, not only is it easy to just, put your foot in your mouth, and we've all done that at some point, and we were like, oh my God, I wish I could take those words back.
Right.
But the other part of that is, when you're in a heightened state of emotion and you are making decisions, important decisions or permanent decisions based on that, at some point you might want to wish that you had paused long enough to collect yourself and kind of get to a neutral point before making the decision or the choice.
You know what that is? I think that's the mental sort of version of don't go to the grocery store while you're very hungry.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So true. Oh my God, that is the worst. I really try to avoid the store when I'm hungry because it's not good.
No. No one can really, I don't care how disciplined you are. If you're starving, you just want to buy everything.
You do. And then you get home. I know for me, if I've ever been in that position, it's been a while because I've trained myself not to do that. But
Right.
there have been plenty of times where I did that. Then you get home and then you satiate your hunger. And then you're looking in the cupboards going, why do I have all this stuff that I would never buy?
Right.
But yet
Yeah.
there it is.
I mean,
Right?
my problem is I'll get home and I'm like, I just bought a whole bunch of things that I can eat right now and nothing to make meals out of. Great job.
Right. Right. It's all stuff that you could start eating in the car.
Exactly. And sometimes maybe I do. Just saying. Maybe.
Totally. Oh, all right. Let's move on to point number 3. It is you strive to control your thoughts. And we've touched on that before, but let's read what he says. Most of the time, people get caught up in the negative emotion they're experiencing, and they just keep focusing on it, which of course then fuels it. So instead, if you shift your thoughts to how best to respond, so that way you're not like denying or stuffing the emotion, but you're just acknowledging it and then determining the most positive or empowering way to respond.
Right.
I mean,
emotions inform our opinions, and sometimes we need to remove the emotion to actually, be more logical about some of the opinions that we need to get to and, outcomes. But you have to, analyze that emotion and, use the information that it's giving to you in the proper way.
Yeah. Like he says, you don't have much control over the emotion you experience in a given moment all the time, but you can control the reaction to the emotions by focusing on your thoughts. Like, what am I thinking that's generating this emotion? And, that's something that I just drive home all the time when I'm in sessions with clients, because it is so easy. If you're not practiced at managing your thoughts, we have a tendency to just do sloppy thinking.
Right.
And then that sloppy thinking is generating all of these emotions that are less than comfortable or,
Sure.
not really how you want to feel.
On that note, you and I have not clash wouldn't be the right word, but we've got into a solid debate in the past about, the choice of being happy, whether or not being happy is a choice. And I don't think that being happy is a choice or isn't a choice. I tend to think that it's a product of a lot of things in life, but I think we did sort of meet in the middle on the fact that you are the one that is going to really make the choice on whether or not, when the tough gets going, if you're going to get past it or if it's going to destroy you. And
totally.
And I think that's something that this sort of is getting at. Like, when you have the emotion, like, you get to choose whether or not you can make the right adjustments if it's negative, or sometimes even like you don't necessarily want to get super happy and emotionally excited about, having a conversation that is, maybe like a contract negotiation where you can't reveal your hand too much when things are starting to go your way. Like, it goes both ways.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. I like what he says here, Mr. Goleman. He says, you can't prevent a bird from landing on your head, but you can keep it from building a nest.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Right. So he's, controlling your reaction to your emotions by focusing on your thoughts. And he says, by striving to control your thoughts, you resist becoming a slave to your emotions. And that's the big thing right there. So many people are a slave to their emotions, and they don't realize, they haven't connected the dot, that they're the ones generating the emotions most of the time.
100%. I definitely agree with you on that. And, going back to our larger discussion where maybe we've disagreed, like, I think you and I are both right. It's just the way you look at it. You know what I mean? Like, I can't say that I'm always going to be happy, but I can also, at the same time say, I'm not going to let things destroy me if I'm not super happy.
Exactly. How you can decide how you're going to react.
Right.
Okay. Number 4, you benefit from criticism. So obviously, most of us do not enjoy negative feedback, but you know that criticism is a chance to learn, even if it's not delivered in the best way. And even when it's unfounded, it gives you a window into how others think.
Right.
So when you receive negative feedback, keep your emotions in check and ask yourself, how can this make me better?
I hate the word criticism because there's a negative connotation with it, obviously. But like, we all need feedback, and we get feedback for everything that we do. So when it's negative or maybe not what we're going for, why is that a bad thing? Like, sure, it sucks. Maybe people aren't, receiving the things that you want them to the way that you would like them to. But at the same time, like, if you don't get the feedback, then you don't know that maybe you could be doing something better. Like, life is all about adjustment. It's all about adjustment. And I feel like if you don't adjust, I mean, you can't adjust if you don't know that there's room for improvement and adjustment. And if everybody just liked everything the way that you did it, then, I mean, this would be kind of a boring life, in my opinion.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I think that, you can always benefit from that if you decide you're going to be offended and really get your ass chapped, you're just going to resist it. And it's going to be hard for you to grow and evolve and become more emotionally intelligent, according to this. But you know what? There's always a gift in the criticism, and it's either going to be for your own personal growth and development, in which case we can then take that criticism and humbly consider that there's something that we might want to work on, or maybe it's not, maybe it was unfounded. I mean, the gift that you get might actually be insight into what another person thinks about you, and it may be way off base, but it's going to tell you something about them.
I do television broadcasts, and obviously I do a lot of podcasts, and a lot of people will tell you, don't go on Twitter. Don't see what people are saying about you on Twitter. And I love to do that because I feel like I'm actually getting an uncensored, unfiltered stream of feedback. And I feel like I'm an adult. I'm mature enough to understand what is, elementary level feedback where, I remember seeing this tweeted one time after a fight card that I provided commentary for. It said something along the lines of, TJ's a terrible commentator. He needs to get a tan. It's like, well, I'm on the television for like 4 minutes at the top of the show, and then there's 2 minutes and 56 or 2 hours and 56 minutes of me where you don't see me at all, you just hear me. That's ridiculous. But then I've noticed some people talk about like speech patterns and vocal crutches that I have, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna write that one down. Like, we don't need to see that, say that more than, twice a show. And it's like, like I can look because maybe it sucks that I think someone thinks that I'm pale and pasty, but you know what? Like that's not a real, critique of my ability to speak and call a fight.
Right. Yeah. It'd be different if you were like trying to, sell tanning lotion.
Right.
But right. So I think you're right about the social media aspect, as long as you've got the maturity, I guess, and the
honestly,
emotional stability to be discerning about what you're reading.
Right. And, I like to think that I'm strong there. So I like to see it. I like to evaluate it and see what is, actually, good feedback and nonsense. And sometimes the nonsense is funny.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's just good for a laugh.
Right.
But if there's something valid there, it's great if you're mature enough to just take it and go, I might be able to improve myself a little bit. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
All right. Number 5, you show authenticity. Now, authenticity, I think this is a good one to talk about for a minute. Authenticity doesn't mean that you share everything about yourself to everyone all of the time. It does mean saying what you mean and meaning what you say and sticking to your values and principles above all else. And you know that not everyone is going to appreciate your sharing your thoughts and feelings, but the ones who matter will. So
I love the way that you describe that. Because have you ever heard people just like, quote unquote, tell it like it is and say, real talk, I'm being real. And it's like, sometimes you're just being a real dick. Like, honestly, like, that's not being real. That's like literally just being mean. If you want to have a real conversation, I don't think you would ever, preface it like, oh, real talk, I don't like this because this, and that's the way it is. It's like, well, no, you can say that and be like authentic, but not also be terrible.
Yeah. Real and authentic doesn't necessarily mean it's okay to be, an ass.
Right.
You can, but I do, there's that. And then the other part of that is there's a lot of I'm using air quotes here, authenticity going on all over the place because it's the trend du jour over the last, about 10 years. But people, I feel, kind of mistake that with, oh, I need to share every personal thing about me because that's being authentic. And I think that, there's a confusion there. And it doesn't mean, being authentic doesn't mean that you need to dump your personal stuff on everyone that you come into contact with. There's a time and a place and in the right people for that. But not every time, every place, and every person needs to be the recipient of every nook and cranny of your feelings and your business.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Being real doesn't mean that you forego being classy. You know what I mean? Like, I think that a lot of people tend to sort of think that, oh, I'm real, so I don't worry about the way that I come off in certain situations, and I just let everything, out there for everyone to see and hear. It's like, I don't think that's the same thing. Like, that's not being real. That's like, yeah.
It's just putting all your stuff out there. And, if that's your deal, but I just think that, keeping some feelings and some things to yourself is not being inauthentic. It's just simply being private. There's a difference.
I mean, they're like, I just want to be perceived a certain way. And, not everything needs to be out there all the time, despite it. I'm not hiding who I am by not letting everything out.
No, I mean, it's really not any different than, it's kind of against our general sort of moral code, I guess, or value system, at least in our country, the way I've been brought up, that you don't go around and tell everybody how much money you make. You just, because it's private.
No, I mean,
you just, right? And so how is it different than if you go around and are constantly telling everybody about all of your personal business and all of your feelings every day?
Well, I mean, even if you're being factually correct and maybe it sounds braggadocious, like if you come out and be like, how much money I made last year? I made $1 million last year, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no one's going to believe you, even if it's the truth. Like, you're overcompensating for something. Maybe you do make that much money, but what else is inadequate in your life that you're starting to, walk around with your chest puffed out?
Right. You have to wonder about what the motivation is for oversharing, shall we say?
Right. Like, did no one hug you as a child? Is that what this is? You're looking for affection from everyone and adoration? Like, I don't know. It's just weird to me.
Yeah.
And the opposite of that is true too. If you walk around and say, I made $10 million, you're going to come off, odd, and people are going to, judge you in a lot of different ways. But if you also walk around and be like, I made $10 last year, this is like, that's also not a good look.
Right.
It's just not like I mean, that may sound odd, but I can't tell you how many people that I know, Loree, that their whole bit in life is to tell you how hard they have it. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, that's because when people are they're in a pattern, they're in a patterned way of being and a patterned way of, sharing their story. And part of that is, they're looking for something. So they're either looking for, understanding, or they're looking for pity, or they're looking for somebody to say, yes, I can relate to that. I'm there with you. So they're looking for connection. Or sometimes people are just simply looking, and they don't even maybe realize it. It's really a way of being manipulative, because you're soliciting, you solicit pity from people by inappropriately sharing your sob story all the time under the misguided notion that you're being authentic.
You know what? I think you're onto something there, because I think I definitely do feel that way when it's a situation where it's coming from someone maybe that I don't know all that well, because you kind of give people the benefit of the doubt that everyone is normal and everyone is this baseline. And your first interaction with someone, if they're constantly like that, but you don't know because it's your first time around them, then they do sort of elicit that feeling that maybe they're looking for out of you. But like, the people that I'm talking about, like, I've been friends with, people since high school, where it's just like every time I talk to them, it's just like, man, this storm front rolled in over your life in middle school and it's just been raining every day. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, that's, I think a lot of it is just manipulating, certain reactions from people. And sometimes people are doing that knowing what they're doing. And sometimes they don't realize they're doing that because they've been just in a patterned way of doing that for a long, long time. And it's not to say, just listeners, it's not to say that, it's not okay to share your feelings and your stories and your emotions. It's to say that there are certain times and places and certain people where it's more appropriate to do that. That's what I'm saying. It's just, having some discernment about how and where and when you share.
Right. And let's mix it up a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying to lie by any means, but like, if you're going to tell me how terrible your life is and we're close friends, I would think that at some point you're going to tell me the good parts of your life as well. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, everyone has their kind of their ground zero mental or emotional state. And sometimes it's really hard for them to pull out of that. You know what I mean? Until it's pointed out to them.
Right.
And they decide they don't want to feel that way anymore. And then they have to figure out how to stop feeling that way. And, and that's learning how to stop telling the same old negative story.
Right. No, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Number 6, you demonstrate empathy. Now, the ability to show empathy, which includes understanding others' thoughts and feelings, helps you connect with others. So instead of judging or labeling others, you work hard to see things through their eyes. I'm totally agreeing with that. I agree that understanding doesn't mean that you actually agree with the person. You just can, understand, and showing empathy also doesn't require taking on another person's feelings. It's just more about, compassion and having the understanding that they're feeling this way and why.
And empathy, I believe, is one of the real benchmarks for people that deal with social awkwardness and when you have to actually like seek professional help for maybe some of those issues and they wonder where you are developmentally. Empathy is a big sort of marker on whether or not they need to go, certain therapeutic avenues to help people, adjust and be more comfortable in their environments. And I think like empathy, while it is basic, human nature for a lot of people, for some, a lot of others struggle to really even, feel that. Not that they don't care about the others that are around them, but to recognize it and to know when to be empathetic. It's not, first nature for everyone.
No, it's not. I mean, it's basically, having that ability, as the saying goes, to, walk in another person's shoes.
Right.
And some people they just don't have it. It's very unnatural for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And some people are so filled with empathy that they actually are empaths and they take on another person's feelings. That's something,
that's an anchor for some people. That'll just drag you to the bottom of the ocean.
Well, it can, because, there's a lot of negative feelings out there. And if you are an empath and you're taking all that on, you really have to learn how to manage that and protect yourself, because you're right. It can really drag you down.
That's one thing I admire about my friends that are therapists. The ability to really listen and take on someone's feelings in a session and then be able to compartmentalize it to where it's out of your mind and you don't let it sort of carry your own emotion into your next patient and appointment. And I'm sure you're someone that has to make sure that you, have a session with someone where you're really, trying to understand their issues and help them, but also at the same time, like, not have those feelings carry over to the next person you deal with.
Totally. Exactly. I mean, I consider myself to be an extremely empathetic person. I have that ability, but I have the ability to, you're right, compartmentalize it and not take it all on and take it with me like an empath would. Really, I began to understand, as I became an adult, that's why doctors sometimes seem rather cold and uncaring. It's not that they're not, but they have to really guard their emotions. Or can you imagine, with all of the things that they see and do on a daily basis, if they were overly, empathic,
right,
they would have a hard time doing their job.
Right. And also too, like, I'm going to take away the mental sort of thing from this out of the equation for a brief moment. But let's talk about medical doctors. Like someone will come in and start telling you their symptoms of an issue, and maybe you find out that it's, this ailment. The next person that's going to come in and tell you, symptoms, if they're similar, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always the same sort of diagnosis that you and conclusion that you're going to come to. And I think that it's similar there in the sense that you don't want to allow information and feelings from one person sort of make you come to different conclusions or the same conclusion about a different person. Even though things are similar, you have to make sure that you don't let it carry over and
right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like the two different people, for example, could come in feeling the same way, but the cause could be completely different in each one.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. Like you arrived at sort of the same conclusion, but it's not the same, road that was traveled there.
Yeah, exactly. I get that. That makes sense. Number 7, you praise others. All humans crave acknowledgement and appreciation. When you commend others, you satisfy that craving and build trust in the process. And this all begins when you focus on the good in others, which, is hard for a lot of people to do. Sometimes some people make that difficult for us to do.
Sure.
Right?
No, 100%. You were talking about real and authenticity a moment ago. Yeah. I'm reminded when you bring this up of that old saying that real recognizes real. And with that, it's basically saying that if you're a true professional, you are able to respect other, high-level professional work. And I think that is the sort of same situation just generally in life. Like if you are able to, be a certain way and maybe someone else is similar to that, but maybe it like infringes upon how you feel about, your own work. You don't put them down because it makes you self-conscious about your own. Like be confident in yourself. There's no better way of doing that than complimenting other people that do, good things. It's good to be happy with others. And I think that sort of happiness can carry over to yourself as well.
Yeah, it feels good to make somebody else feel good, it does. And then by sharing specifically what you appreciate in another person and praising them, you inspire them to become an even better version or to become the best version of themselves. That really fuels people. And sometimes we don't realize how even the tiniest bit of praise or compliment or acknowledgement can really have a huge impact on people.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not hard to do. It's uttering some kind words. It's not like it takes a lot of effort.
At the same time, I think it's a lifestyle, to be honest with you. Like if you are able to do that, then I remember a story about a celebrity that my friend met, and I happened to have been around this person multiple times, and I love this person. I think they're fantastic people to be around, like fantastic person, and I enjoy looking forward to the next time we chat. And he was telling me a time that he saw him in an airport and he said the guy was just a complete ass. And like, I firmly believe it's because he was probably traveling and was either inconvenienced by it and was just in a bad mood, or maybe was on his way to a plane that he was late for. But it's like in that moment, my point of bringing this up is it's a snapshot in time. And if that photo is taken when you're kind of in a bad mood, it will leave a mark for this person that probably will never see you again, but will tell a story about how you're an absolute prick over and over and over again. And it's the same thing like you're saying. If you give someone a compliment, it may carry with them for the rest of their lives, and you may have no idea that you have that kind of power over someone.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Number 8, you give helpful feedback. So that's kind of similar to the one we had earlier about it's kind of like the one you benefit from criticism. So this is sort of in that same vein. You give helpful feedback. Obviously, negative feedback has the great potential to hurt the feelings of others. So realizing this, you reframe criticism as constructive feedback so that the recipient sees it as helpful rather than harmful.
Yeah. I mean, I deal with a lot of, podcasters like yourself, and a lot of people are, asking me what I think they can do better. And I have no problem sharing, some criticism. Maybe it's not necessarily what they want to hear, but I always do like to give them, praise when I see it, or even at the same time. Like if I'm going to tell you to work on something, I also want to let you know that you're doing a great job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's good to do both.
Yeah, I think, and depending on the circumstances, you can ask, like if it's somebody that's like a friend or a family or somebody close to me, and you feel like, gosh, somebody really needs to mention this to them, you can ask first if they're willing to hear some constructive criticism before you start dishing it up. A lot of times, if you just ask somebody if it's okay, like,
Right.
would you be willing? Can I tell you something? Would you be okay if I share something? I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but I just want to, and then you can kind of gauge their reaction. And a lot of times if you approach it that way, a person is much more open to hearing what you have to say rather than just saying, well, they need to hear this and
Right.
then, spewing what you need to say.
And I think it actually, like, even if what they say, rubs you the wrong way or hurts you, it's the fact that they, are treading lightly to bring it up to you, because to me, it just shows that they care. Like they feel like they see something that needs to be brought to my attention. Yes, it may not, sit well with me or sit, the way that I want it to, but the fact that they were willing to sort of go out of their way and be like, I won't tell you if you don't want to know. Like there's a lot of,
well, it states their intention that you can tell their intention is to be helpful.
Right. Exactly right. And also, again, I think it just goes back to the fact that they care.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side, if the context is something like, say, you say it's in the context of a job and you're talking to an employee, then you don't need to ask if you can give some helpful feedback. You could just, say, I have some constructive things that I want you to work on. You don't have to ask if they're willing to hear it because the context is different.
Right. I mean, you work together. You're doing jobs. You're doing
the job.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Number 9, you apologize. So it takes a lot of strength and courage to be able to say that you're sorry, but doing so demonstrates humility, a quality that will naturally draw others to you. Emotional intelligence helps you realize that apologizing doesn't always mean that you're wrong. It does mean that you value your relationship more than your ego.
Right.
I thought that was a very good point.
I think that one's an important one, but at the same time, like if you're going to apologize, please be authentic. I can't tell you how many times I get apologies that are just like, casually tossed around where it's like, I don't think you really care. And you're just saying you're sorry because you feel you need to.
Yeah, you're just paying lip service, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think when it comes to relationships in particular, something that you really value, a close relationship, a friendship, whatever, that saying says it all, that saying that goes, you can be right or you can be happy. So sometimes, you just need to be okay not being right.
I mean, like, I can't tell you how many times I have died on the hill for an argument where maybe I even win. And then I get there and I'm like, well, that was not worth it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the winner of the argument. And now I feel terrible.
Yeah. And now everybody feels like they lost.
Right.
Somehow.
Exactly. So,
Right. Okay. Number 10, you forgive and forget. Hanging on to resentment is like leaving a knife inside a wound. While the offending party moves on with their life, you never give yourself the chance to heal. When you forgive and forget, you prevent others from holding your emotions, hostage, allowing you to move forward. Yeah, I think, forgiving is every bit as much for you as the other person. And you hear all the time, some people say that they can forgive, but they're not going to forget, which I find to be rather curious. So, what happens is they're still actually really hanging on to it then.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. When someone says, I'll forgive, but I won't forget, that basically tells me that you're paying that lip service that we were talking about. And you're not actually getting over it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think if someone, if they borrow money and they don't give it back to you, but you don't want that to destroy your, relationship and friendship. Yeah. Forgive. And then don't forget that if you give that person money again, you might not ever see it again. In fact, you probably won't ever see it again. But if you're truly going to forgive them, let's not, secretly begrudge them, internally forever because they didn't pay you back.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I mean, depending on what the situation is that you're forgiving, there still may be a lesson that you need to learn within that whole, whatever the situation was, like the example you just gave. But on the other hand, then you have sometimes people will forgive, but they're not really forgetting and they're actually still holding resentment, and they kind of have this need. This will happen a lot of times, I think, with couples where somebody has breached the trust in the relationship. They're trying to repair it. And, the party that was offended decides that they're going to forgive.
Right.
They don't really forget. They still have resentment. And then what happens is, they kind of have a need to punish the offending party because of what they did to them in the past, right? It's like, you hurt me before, so even though I forgive you, I'm not going to let you forget it, and now I have the right to remind you of it and constantly make you feel guilty for your past transgression. And so you're not really forgiving in that case.
Yeah, going back to what I was saying, like if a partner cheated on you and you forgive them, but you're not going to forget. And in that sense, you're never going to let them maybe leave town again by themselves without, hounding them. Then you haven't forgiven them. Like you really don't. I mean, like I understand it's hard. Like in every committed relationship, Loree, that I had ever been in with a woman, I basically said, like, look, if you cheat on me, like it's over. Cause like I won't be able to forgive you. Like maybe I want to stay with you and maybe I'll trick myself to be like, yeah, I've forgiven you. We're cool now. But now I'm just really jealous of everything. And that, like, I mean, to me, that just was a
deal breaker.
Yeah, deal breaker. And, some people are better than that, than me, but I'm not, and I don't think I'm wrong for being upfront that way.
No, you know yourself enough to know that that's something you can't come back from. So rather than fake it, you are authentic.
Right.
And
I don't want to waste anybody's time.
Work. Yep. Got it. That makes sense. All right. Number 11, you keep your commitments. It's common nowadays for people to break an agreement or a commitment when they feel like it. Of course, bailing on an evening of Netflix with a friend will cause less harm than breaking a promise to your child or missing a major business deadline. But when you make a habit of keeping your word in things big and small, you develop a strong reputation for reliability and trustworthiness. So emotionally intelligent people keep their commitments. I think that speaks, keeping your commitments then, it also really speaks loudly about a person's integrity and their values.
Right.
I mean, there's times when something unavoidable or an unusual circumstance, causes you to have to break a commitment. But for the most part, you do what you say you're going to do, or you don't say you're going to do it. You know what I mean?
100%. And I think this is a little bit different, but, going back to what you said, like when you keep your commitments, you never know, how well it's going to sort of represent yourself in the future and sort of leave a indelible mark and impression on someone. I feel the same way about remembering someone's name. I'm terrible with this. I try to remember everyone's name. I'm just bad with names, but like something that's small. If I say I'm going to hang out with you, and I always, deliver, maybe that is enough for you to recommend me for a job or something where it benefits me. But the same thing, I think, is if I'm able to remember someone's name or someone remembers my name, it goes the longest way. And I know that's not a commitment, but it goes to speak to the level of if you just do a good enough job and be thorough with things, you are remembered in a completely different light than if you are willy-nilly and just casually say, yeah, we'll do that, and then never do it.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. It's that's like an example of being committed to valuing that other person enough to try to remember their name.
The smallest of commitments go the furthest, I think, sometimes.
They do. And I think also emotionally and spiritually mature and thoughtful people also have the presence of mind to think through something before they commit to it so that they don't constantly find themselves in predicaments that cause them to want to or need to break commitments, right?
I mean, I just recently started working with someone on a podcast, and we did one episode, and 5 weeks later, we never did another episode, and the 6th week, I was like, hey, we going to do the show this week? And they're like, I can't, I quit. And it's like, I kind of figured that. We've been gone for 5 weeks, but like, why did you say you were going to do the show to begin with? You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people think, I can do that. I can pull that off, and then realize, oh man, no, you had no real intention of actually doing this the second it was inconvenient in your life.
Yeah. So, they bailed on the commitment, and then on top of it, they didn't even have the professionalism to call and say, you know what, I was wrong. This isn't for me. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to discontinue and let you
Right.
know.
And it was 5 weeks of excuses, and it's like, dude, I would just rather you be honest and say you can't do it. I get it.
Right.
No, we'll
Yeah.
do it. We'll do it. No, we won't. All right.
Right. Keep the commitment or fess up.
Yeah, be real.
Be real. Exactly. All right. Number 12, coming down the home stretch here. You help others. One of the greatest ways to positively impact the emotions of others is to help them. Most people don't really care where you graduated from or even about your previous accomplishments. But what they care about the hours that you're willing to take out of your schedule to listen to them or to help out, or your readiness to get down in the trenches and work alongside them, right? So actions like those build trust and inspire others to follow your lead when it counts. So helping others is another great indication of people that are emotionally fit.
Yeah.
People can go ahead.
Well, I think going out of your way to help people, whether, sometimes it's philanthropy, other times it's, teaching someone something that you do. Like, to me, it's an incredibly selfish act in the sense that I get a great gratitude or great joy out of it. One of the best things I can do is teach someone how to do a podcast and set things up. And I find that when I teach people, I sort of understand how much I actually know about something. And while, they're appreciative of me helping them, I'm appreciative of the fact that, like, oh man, I actually, vocalized this and realized I'm kind of decent at this. And the same thing with, giving money to like Toys for Tots, donating a toy during the Christmas time. Like, I don't see that child actually get what we donate, but like, I just feel better about it. And, selfless acts can be very selfish at times when you think about how good it makes you feel.
Yeah. And actually that one is all about contribution, which we've talked a lot about before. And that is a very powerful human need. So it makes total sense that it makes you feel good to be able to contribute on some level. Yeah. And I think that, people can often find themselves in situations where, they feel like they're up against something overwhelming and that they're alone in this battle. And emotionally intelligent people, according to this, will pick up on that and they'll lend a hand or just offer emotional support rather than be just oblivious to the potential needs of others.
100%.
Number 13, last one. You protect yourself from emotional sabotage. You realize that emotional intelligence also has a dark side, such as when individuals attempt to manipulate others' emotions to promote a personal agenda or for some other selfish cause. And that's why you continue to sharpen your own emotional intelligence to protect yourself when they do. And that's a tricky one.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because I don't know how to articulate exactly what I think.
Yeah, here's I think this'll frame it up perfectly. Protecting yourself from emotional sabotage. All right, that's really blatantly obvious when you listen to the media or you listen to politicians running for office on both sides. So what he was saying is that, individuals will attempt to manipulate others' emotions in order to promote a personal agenda, right? And if you're an emotionally intelligent person, you sharpen your own emotional intelligence so that you can protect yourself when that's happening. And that's what happens when we're watching the news all day. They are using... Right. They're tugging at your emotional, heartstrings, and they're manipulating you emotionally in order to sway the way that you feel.
Right. So I posted on Facebook a very long sort of post yesterday because I don't know what was going on with the algorithm, but both sides of the aisle was just popping up with, opinions in my Facebook newsfeed. And obviously it's from, friends and family. And like everything was just hitting me. Both sides of the aisle were just attacking one another with these posts. And like what bothered me, Loree, is I looked at all these posts that they were, reposting. And it's like not one of them was from a real reputable site without an agenda. And I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
can argue that, network television isn't even that. It seems like everybody has an agenda. But my
Mm-hmm.
point is these posts were doing nothing but trying to incite, a sort
Mm-hmm.
of heated
Conflict.
discord. Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
discourse with one another. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like I posted that, whether you post something from a very conservative blog or a very liberal blog, like please just do me this one favor. Go out and fact check everything and make sure that it's not something that can be discredited within 3 minutes. And just realize that while we all have certain views, we need to meet in the middle on things. And I think, when it comes to politics, like you need to have your guard up just because both sides are going to just try to pull you in ways that
Mm-hmm.
are just, it's not beneficial for anybody. I think we're so divided at this point that no one is actually meeting in the middle and having real, honest conversations
Yeah.
about things that we need to have answers for.
Yeah, because it's not about trying to find the middle ground. It's about trying to say you're wrong and I'm right,
Right.
and you need to think this way, or there's going to be trouble.
And yeah,
So
and like
that's
you mentioned,
a shame.
you mentioned keeping your guard up. The one thing that, like, when you were reading it the first time, that I got a little bit hesitant about was you need to make sure you don't get emotionally sabotaged, but you also need to let your guard down a little bit. We don't want to go through life where we have this wall where we don't let anybody, really get
Yeah.
close to us. And for some people, I think it's a very fine line in how they can,
Yeah.
have relationships, but also not get destroyed by, the evildoers, if you will.
Yeah, well, right. It's really about using your own emotional intelligence to be able to refrain from being manipulated by others who are trying to use their emotions to control their thinking, or to control your thinking and your
Right.
action, or trying to use your emotions to control
Right.
your thinking and your actions.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
my favorite thing to do with people is to have a conversation where we both stimulate one another to think outside of our own boxes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To have intelligent discourse. And I'm the first one to admit that there's a lot of things that I don't know about, and I look forward to learning all about them. But I also hope that someone will sort of listen to the things that I'm saying at the same time and hear me out. And those are the conversations where I think we really become close with one another, because we're not trying to manipulate one another. Just like at the end of the conversation, I don't care if we agree or disagree. In fact, maybe I'm your friend because you always disagree with me, and I want that sort of influence in my life. But I just want to be heard, and I don't want to be manipulated. And I think
Yeah.
far too often people are looking to manipulate us.
Totally. Absolutely. All right, that wraps up our 13 points. I think that those were really, we've heard about a lot of these things. We've talked about even several of them before,
Right.
but I just think it's really interesting that according to this book by Daniel Goleman, that those are actually characteristics of emotional intelligence. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Well, I think it's good because we talked about it at the very top. There is a maturation process in life, and more often than not, we just think about the physical maturation of a human being, and not so much the mental side of things. And as you were reading and as we were talking, I'm not going to say that I'm deficient in any manner, but listening to some of these things, I definitely see room for improvement on myself and my side. And I think it's kind of good that it was brought to my attention through this podcast.
Yeah, totally. I mean, me too. I'm a perpetual student, a lifetime student of growth. So I am always open to looking at what can I learn, where can I evolve, and expand and raise my consciousness and, become a better version of myself. So I love this stuff.
I think the smartest thing anybody can say and realize is they're not the smartest person on the planet, and they don't know everything. You know what I mean? And if you're willing to
Right.
say that, you're pretty damn smart in my book.
Totally. I'll go with that. Thank you for chiming in. That was really a good conversation. Well, the good news is emotional intelligence is not fixed at birth, as you alluded to earlier. It can be nurtured and strengthened throughout adulthood with immediate benefits to our health, our relationships, and our work. These 13 characteristics can be embraced and make you emotionally smarter by practicing self-awareness, self-discipline, and empathy. And anyone who is sincerely interested in a kinder and more civil society should take an active interest in practicing and teaching how to be more emotionally intelligent. And on that note, I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for spending some of your valuable time hanging out with me and TJ today. If you feel guided to subscribe, if you haven't already, and giving me a rating, know that it means a lot to me, and I really do appreciate it. If you're trying to make some shift happen in your life, I'd like to remind you that I've been a personal performance coach for 11 years, and I invite you to find out what private coaching with me is all about on LoreeBischoff.com. You can also check out my book, Common Sense Happiness, there or on Amazon. And lastly, I'd love to connect with you on any of the social media platforms, so don't be shy. Stop by and say hi. Until next week, stay feisty and emotionally intelligent, my friends. And now go forth and make some epic shift happen in your life. You too, Gary V.
The preceding podcast was a TJ DeSantis production. Comments, questions, and inquiries can be directed to DeSantisProd@gmail.com.